What if this wasn't just another shocking headline? What if it was something bigger, something people have been hinting at for years, now suddenly feeling real? Right now, the internet is spiraling after reports involving Offset and an alleged shooting outside a Florida casino. At first, it seemed like a chaotic, isolated incident, another moment of violence tied to fame. But within hours, the conversation shifted. It didn't stay simple. It didn't stay contained. Because once the clips started resurfacing, everything changed. Old interviews featuring Katt began circulating again. Not because he directly spoke about this situation, but because people felt his past warnings about the entertainment industry suddenly sounded familiar, almost too familiar. He talked about power, pressure, control, and what happens when someone becomes too successful or too difficult to manage. Now people are connecting dots. Past incidents, tragedies, and controversies are being pulled into one growing narrative. And the question being asked online is just, what happened? Is this part of something bigger? To understand why this story has exploded the way it has, you can't just look at the casino incident by itself. For millions of people watching, it doesn't feel like a single moment anymore. It feels like a continuation, a chapter in a longer story that's been unfolding quietly over time. And at the center of that story is Offset. As a member of Migos, Offset helped define an entire era of hip-hop. Their sound reshaped modern rap. Their influence stretched across music, fashion, and culture. From the outside, their rise looked unstoppable, chart-topping hits, sold-out shows, and a lifestyle that symbolized success at the highest level. But success like that comes with a cost. Because fame doesn't just bring attention, it brings pressure. Constant pressure. The pressure to stay relevant, to maintain an image, to keep moving in an industry that rarely slows down. Over time, fans began noticing subtle shifts. The group dynamic changed. Rumors of creative differences surfaced. Public interactions became less frequent, less unified. What once felt like a tight bond slowly began to show signs of strain. And then came tragedy. The loss of a close member of the group didn't just impact their music, it changed everything. It reshaped relationships, altered priorities, and left a lasting emotional mark. After that, nothing felt the same. What had once been a unified journey began to split into individual paths. Solo careers grew, distances widened. Even when moments of reconciliation appeared publicly, something underneath always felt unresolved. At the same time, another layer of complexity was building, one that fans don't always see. The financial reality of fame. Behind every performance, every appearance, every luxury post on social media, there's an entire system at work. Management teams, contracts, taxes, business obligations, and constant financial movement. And when multiple pressures stack at once, the weight becomes difficult to ignore. Rumors began circulating over time about legal issues, business disputes, and financial strain. None of it clearly confirmed, but enough to shape perception. And in today's digital world, perception spreads fast. Because once people start believing a narrative, everything that happens afterward gets filtered through it. Then there's Offset's personal life, especially his relationship with Cardi B. Their relationship has never been private. It's been one of the most public, discussed, and analyzed partnerships in modern entertainment. Fans have watched every high and low, every disagreement, every reconciliation, every emotional moment played out in front of millions. What should have been private struggles became public content, headlines, debates, social media trends. And over time, that level of exposure adds another kind of pressure, the pressure of being watched constantly. So when the alleged casino incident happened, it didn't land in a vacuum. It landed in a story that was already complicated. A story filled with past tension, emotional weight, public scrutiny, and unanswered questions. That's why the reaction was immediate and intense. At first, reports described a chaotic scene, a sudden moment, confusion, movement, panic. Details were unclear and information was limited, but before anything could be confirmed, the internet had already taken control of the narrative. Clips started circulating. Witness accounts, some conflicting, began appearing online, and almost instantly speculation took over. People started analyzing everything. Was it random? Was it targeted? Was there more behind it? And then came the theories. This is where the story took a darker turn. Because instead of focusing only on the incident itself, people began connecting it to something larger, past events, industry rumors, statements made years ago. Everything started blending together into an overarching narrative. And once that happens, it changes how every new detail is interpreted. Silence becomes suspicious. Coincidences start to feel intentional. And uncertainty turns into fuel for speculation. But here's the reality. Nothing has been fully confirmed. No official explanation has clarified exactly what happened. No complete timeline has been verified. And yet, the conversation continues to grow. Because in the absence of clear information, people fill in the gaps themselves. That's how stories like this evolve. What makes this situation so compelling isn't just the incident, it's the uncertainty around it. It's the unanswered questions. It's the feeling that there might be more beneath the surface, even if there's no proof yet. And in today's digital age, that's enough. Because speculation spreads faster than facts. Right now, the narrative is still forming. Some people believe this was simply an unfortunate, isolated event, nothing more than a moment of chaos that got amplified online. Others believe there's something deeper at play, something connected to the pressures of fame, the complexities of the industry, and the realities that aren't always visible to the public. And then there are those in the middle, watching, waiting, trying to separate truth from noise. One thing is clear, though. This story has moved beyond just an incident. It has become a conversation about fame, pressure, and perception. About how quickly narratives form, how fast they spread, and how difficult it becomes to control them once they take hold. Because once a story reaches this level, it doesn't stop easily. Every new detail, real or rumored, adds another layer. Every silence raises more questions. Every reaction shapes the narrative further. And that's where things stand right now. Uncertain, unresolved, still unfolding. The incident itself may have happened in a moment, but the story around it is far from over. Because in situations like this, what keeps people watching isn't just what happened. It's what might happen next. Here is your rewritten 1,200-word script in English, smoother, more cinematic, and structured for storytelling while keeping speculation neutral and engaging. By the time the story reached this point, it was already loaded with tension, history, and unanswered questions. And that's exactly why when Katt Williams re-entered the conversation, the internet reacted the way it did. Not because he spoke directly about Offset or this specific incident, but because of what he represents in online culture right now. Over the past year, resurfaced interviews of Katt Williams have taken on a life of their own. Clips where he discusses Hollywood, power structures, control, and the hidden dynamics of the entertainment industry have been widely circulated, dissected, and reinterpreted by audiences searching for meaning in chaos. Whether people take his words literally or symbolically, they've become part of a much larger conversation, one about fame, pressure, and what it really means to exist at the highest level of the entertainment world. And now, with Offset trending, those same clips are being pulled back into focus. Reframed, reinterpreted, reconnected. Not as standalone statements, but as pieces of a narrative people are actively trying to build in real time. But as those connections spread, the story begins to evolve again. Because now, it's no longer just about one artist or one incident. It becomes a discussion about patterns, about timing, about how quickly things can change in an industry built on visibility, pressure, and constant exposure. And once that idea takes hold, every new detail starts to feel heavier. Every moment feels more significant. Every silence feels more intentional. Which brings everything back to the moment that shifted the entire focus of the internet. The casino incident. Because now, it isn't being viewed as just an isolated confrontation. It's being treated, at least by some, as the starting point of something bigger, a conversation people feel has been ignored for too long. And that belief is what pushes the story into its most controversial phase. The night itself didn't begin with anything unusual. On the surface, it looked completely ordinary. A casino in Florida, bright lights, constant movement, a place built for entertainment, distraction, and high-stakes risk. Thousands of people moving in and out, most of them unnoticed, most of them anonymous. A place where nothing out of the ordinary is supposed to happen. But that night something did. And according to circulating reports, Offset was present near the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino when everything changed. Not inside a private room, not behind closed doors, but in one of the most public exposed areas of the entire location, the valet zone. A space where cars constantly arrive and depart, where people wait, talk, move around, a place covered by cameras, a place designed to be controlled. And yet, despite all of that, chaos still found its way in. At first, the situation wasn't clear. Witness accounts described confusion before anything else. Voices raised, movement near vehicles, people turning to look, trying to understand what was happening before they even fully processed it. Then, according to those same reports, the situation escalated quickly. What started as an interaction, possibly an argument, shifted into something more intense. And then came the moment that changed everything. Gunfire. Sudden, loud, unmistakable. The kind of sound that cuts through everything else and instantly transforms the environment. In seconds, the atmosphere shifted. People scattered. Security rushed in. What had been a controlled, public space became unpredictable. And as emergency protocols activated, the situation stopped being just an argument. It became an incident. Offset was later reported to have been injured and taken for medical attention. Initial updates suggested he was stable and under observation. But beyond that, details remained limited. Carefully worded, controlled, incomplete. And that lack of clarity created the first major turning point in the narrative. Because almost immediately, the internet refused to accept a simple explanation. Instead, speculation began spreading faster than verified information. Multiple versions of the story started appearing at the same time. Some claimed it was sudden and unplanned. Others suggested there had been prior tension between those involved. And then a third layer emerged, claims that financial disputes might have played a role. None of it confirmed, but that didn't slow anything down. Because online, repetition creates belief faster than facts. And that's when the first major shift happened. Old clips started resurfacing. Past interviews, live stream conversations. Comments that once seemed irrelevant suddenly felt important again. People began constructing timelines, trying to piece together how everything might connect. And at the center of those resurfaced moments was a recurring theme. Tension, not just between individuals, but within a larger system involving pressure, money, and reputation. Then came the second layer, a wave of posts began suggesting that this wasn't random at all, that there had been something building behind the scenes. Unresolved issues, private conflicts, alleged financial disagreements that never became public. Again, none of it verified. But once those ideas entered the conversation, they spread quickly, because they offered something people were looking for: an explanation. And as those claims circulated, the narrative shifted again. What initially looked like a sudden, chaotic incident was now being reframed by parts of the internet as something with deeper roots. Something that didn't start that night. Something that had been building quietly before finally erupting in a place where it could no longer be contained. That reframing changed everything. Because now, people weren't just reacting to what happened. They were trying to understand why it happened. Then came another turning point. More old material resurfaced. Past conflicts, previous tensions, moments that had once seemed minor or unrelated were now being pulled into the same narrative, not as isolated events, but as potential pieces of a larger puzzle. And as that puzzle grew, something unexpected happened. The picture didn't become clearer. It became more confusing. Because the more connections people tried to make, the more possibilities emerged. Was this a random situation that escalated too quickly? Was it the result of a long-standing issue finally reaching a breaking point? Or was the internet simply taking fragments and building a narrative larger than reality? That question became impossible to ignore, and it only intensified when attention shifted again, this time toward Offset's broader life. His career, his responsibilities, his public relationships, his history with Migos. Everything connected to him, even loosely, was now being examined under the same lens. And once that happened, the casino incident stopped being just an event. It became a focal point, a moment through which people began interpreting everything else. Because in situations like this, context becomes everything. Past events gain new meaning. Old statements feel more significant. And even silence starts to carry weight. Right now, the reality is simple. There are still more questions than answers. No full timeline. No confirmed explanation tying everything together. Just fragments, reports, and a constantly evolving narrative shaped by millions of people trying to make sense of it. And that's what makes this story so powerful. Not just what happened, but how it's being interpreted, how it's being expanded, how it's being connected to something bigger, whether that connection is real or not. Because once a story reaches this level, it stops being just about facts. It becomes out-perception. And perception, especially online, can take on a life of its own. So now, the focus isn't just on the incident anymore. It's on what it might mean, what it might represent, and what could come next. Because in a situation like this, the moment itself is only the beginning. The real story is what happens after. And right now, that story is still unfolding. Everything changed the moment the story stopped feeling like a single incident and started feeling like something much bigger. When news first broke that Offset had been involved in a shooting outside a Florida casino, the reaction was immediate: shock, confusion, concern. At first, people treated it like any other breaking headline, a violent moment, an unfortunate situation, something that would eventually be explained through official reports. But that's not what happened. Instead of clarity, the internet got silence, and in that silence, speculation took over. Within hours, the narrative began to fracture. Different versions of events started circulating at the same time. Some described it as a sudden altercation that escalated without warning. Others suggested there may have been tension leading up to the moment. A few even claimed there were deeper issues involved: financial disputes, personal conflicts, unresolved problems that had never reached the public eye. None of it was confirmed. But that didn't slow anything down. Because once multiple narratives exist at the same time online, something interesting happens. Certainty disappears. And when certainty disappears, people don't stop asking questions. They start creating answers. By the time morning came, the casino incident wasn't just news anymore. It had become an obsession. Social media platforms were flooded with clips, breakdowns, and commentary. Everyone was analyzing something, whether it was the location, the timeline, or the people involved. The valet area, once just a detail in the story, became a focal point. People discussed how exposed it was, how many cameras might have been there, how something like this could happen in a place designed to be secure. But quickly, the focus shifted away from the location and onto the people. That's when the tone changed. Old interviews started resurfacing, past live streams, forgotten moments from years ago. At first glance, they had nothing to do with the incident, but in the context of what had just happened, they suddenly felt different. They felt important. People weren't watching them for entertainment anymore. They were watching them for clues. A random comment from years ago was now being treated like foreshadowing. A joke turned into a theory. A vague statement became evidence of something deeper. And once that mindset took over, the story became almost impossible to control. Every piece of content added fuel. And right in the middle of that storm, one name kept coming back into the conversation: Katt Williams. Not because he had anything to do with the incident directly, but because of what he represents in online culture right now. Over the past year, clips of his interviews have been circulating widely. In those clips, he talks about power, fame, pressure, and the hidden dynamics of the entertainment industry. At the time, many people saw those comments as controversial opinions or just strong personal beliefs. But now, in the aftermath of the casino incident, those same clips were being reinterpreted, reframed, reused as part of a completely different conversation. Some people began treating his words like warnings, suggesting that what happened to Offset might not be random at all, but part of a bigger pattern. Others pushed back, arguing that the internet was forcing connections that didn't exist. And that's where the story split into three distinct paths. The first group saw it as exactly what it appeared to be: a violent incident still under investigation, with limited confirmed details. The second group believed it was the result of pressure, personal, financial, or emotional, building over time and finally reaching a breaking point. And the third group, they believed it reflected something even bigger: a pattern within the entertainment industry itself, something hidden, something difficult to prove but impossible in their view to ignore. None of these perspectives had concrete evidence, but all of them had momentum. And in the digital age, momentum is often more powerful than proof. As the conversation continued to grow, attention shifted again, this time toward Offset's broader life. His career, his relationships, his past with Migos, and the tragedies and tensions that have shaped his journey. People started connecting dots. Moments of success were reinterpreted as pressure. Past conflicts were revisited with new meaning. Even achievements were viewed differently, as if they were part of a larger, more complicated story that no one fully understood. And the more people tried to connect everything, the less clear it became. Because when too many pieces are forced into one narrative, the picture doesn't sharpen, it distorts. Then came another wave of speculation. Unverified posts began claiming that there had been prior tension leading up to the incident. Some described it as financial, others said it was personal. A few suggested it was a mix of both. Again, nothing confirmed, but by this point, confirmation almost didn't matter anymore. The internet had already moved forward. Content creators began analyzing everything in real time, breaking down Offset's history, his public image, his business moves, even his relationships. Every detail was pulled into one continuous storyline, as if everything had been leading to this exact moment. And that's when the tone shifted again. This wasn't being treated as a random event anymore. It was being treated as a turning point. A moment where multiple pressures, real or perceived, collided at once. At the same time, clips of Katt Williams continued to circulate, now edited and captioned in ways that directly linked his broader commentary to current events. Even though he never mentioned Offset in this context, the internet created that connection anyway. For some viewers, it felt like everything was lining up. For others, it felt like pure overanalysis. But that divide only made the conversation stronger. Because disagreement keeps stories alive. And as long as people couldn't agree on what actually happened, or why, it meant the narrative would continue evolving. Then, just as the discussion reached peak intensity, attention shifted one more time. Not to the past, not to the incident itself, but to the future. What happens next? That question became the center of everything. Because no one could answer it. No one knew if more details would emerge, if official statements would clarify the situation, or if new information would completely change the narrative again. And that uncertainty created a sense of tension that extended far beyond the original event. By the time the story reached full viral status, it had outgrown traditional news coverage. It wasn't just trending, it was everywhere. Clips were reposted across platforms. Reaction videos appeared within minutes of each new rumor. Commentary pages updated their theories in real time. Everyone was talking, but no one was saying the same thing. And that confusion only made everything more intense. Because when people are overwhelmed with information but still lack answers, they don't disengage. They lean in further. Right now, that's exactly what's happening. The story is no longer just about what occurred outside a casino. It's about perception, about interpretation, about how quickly a single moment can evolve into a complex, multi-layered narrative driven by speculation and emotion. And the most unsettling part, it's not over, not even close. Because as long as there are unanswered questions, the internet will keep searching, connecting, and building new versions of the story. And when the next update comes, whatever it may be, it won't just continue the narrative. It could change everything. Everything shifted the moment the conversation split in two. On one side, there were viewers who looked at the situation with disbelief. To them, what happened involving Offset was being exaggerated far beyond what the available facts could support. They argued that this was still a developing incident, one with limited verified information, and that the internet had once again moved faster than reality. In their view, people weren't waiting for confirmation anymore. They were building conclusions first and searching for evidence afterward. But on the other side, a very different perspective was taking shape. For this group, the casino incident didn't feel isolated at all. It felt connected, part of a larger pattern involving pressure, visibility, and unresolved tensions that often surround high-profile figures. To them, this wasn't just a random moment of chaos. It was another chapter in something that had been quietly building for a long time. And between those two interpretations, the internet exploded. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Every platform became a space for debate. People weren't just reacting anymore. They were analyzing, comparing, reconstructing. Timelines were built and rebuilt. Old interviews were rewatched with new intent. Past events were pulled back into focus and examined as if they held hidden meaning. Every detail mattered. Or at least it felt like it did. A single rumor could become the foundation of an entire theory. A missing piece of information could spark dozens of competing explanations. And perhaps most importantly, every silence, from officials, from witnesses, from those involved, was interpreted as something meaningful. Because in an environment like this, silence doesn't calm the narrative. It feeds it. As the debate intensified, a new layer entered the conversation: amplification. Influencers, commentators, and reaction channels stepped in, each adding their own interpretation. Videos broke down the incident frame by frame. Live streams discussed possibilities in real time. Entertainment pages posted rapid updates, often contradicting each other within hours. The result? More energy, but not more clarity. At the same time, mainstream media began covering the situation, but in a very different way. Their reports focused on confirmed facts, the location, the timeline, and official acknowledgments, careful wording, limited speculation, measured tone. But those reports couldn't compete with the speed or the emotion of social media. Because online, the story had already evolved beyond facts. It had become interpretation. And interpretation spreads faster than verification ever could. Then came the next wave, reaction from public figures. Not direct confirmations, not detailed explanations, but commentary, carefully worded, often indirect. Some spoke about the pressures of fame. Others reflected on how quickly situations can escalate in high-visibility environments. A few emphasized the unpredictability of life in the spotlight, where private struggles often remain hidden until they erupt into public view. These responses added depth to the conversation. But they didn't slow it down. Because the real driving force wasn't analysis. It was emotion, shock, confusion, curiosity, and beneath all of that, fear of the unknown. At the same time, another shift was happening, one that changed the narrative again. The past was being pulled into the present. Older parts of Offset's public history began resurfacing at scale. Interviews, relationship moments, group dynamics, past controversies, all of it was brought back into circulation and reinterpreted through the lens of the current situation. And that changed everything. Because now, the story wasn't just about what happened in Florida. It was about context. People started asking bigger questions, not just what happened, but how did it get to this point? Career highs and lows, the history of Migos, moments of success and tragedy, public relationships, including his highly visible connection with Cardi B, rumors of financial pressure, business responsibilities, personal struggles. All of it was being folded into one continuous narrative. A narrative that was still evolving in real time. Even within fan communities, the division became impossible to ignore. Some insisted that speculation should stop until official investigations were complete. They argued that building narratives without confirmed evidence could be harmful, not just inaccurate, but unfair. Others pushed back, saying that patterns matter, that ignoring recurring themes in similar situations would be naive, that even without full confirmation, there were enough overlapping signals to justify deeper questioning. And that disagreement kept the conversation alive around the clock. Then came another wave, one that pushed the story into even more unstable territory. Anonymous posts, unverified claims, conflicting timelines. Different accounts began circulating about what happened in the critical moments before the incident. Some described one sequence of events, others described something completely different. And instead of resolving the story, these contradictions made it more complex. Because when stories don't align, people don't step back. They dig deeper. Every inconsistency became a clue. Every gap became an opportunity for theory building. Every contradiction made the situation feel more layered, more hidden, more difficult to fully understand. And slowly, the narrative shifted again. This was no longer being treated as a single event. It became a symbol, a focal point for broader discussions about fame, pressure, and the unseen dynamics of the entertainment world. Once a story reaches that level, it stops being about one person. It becomes about what people believe the system itself represents. And that's why, even without clear answers, the reaction kept growing. Because the conversation wasn't waiting for closure anymore. It was waiting for the next twist. By this point, the incident had stretched far beyond a moment outside a casino. In the public imagination, it had become something unstable, constantly evolving with every new post, every new theory, every new interpretation. And just when it seemed like the intensity couldn't increase any further, it did. A new wave of claims began circulating, pushing the story into its most chaotic phase yet. Now, the focus wasn't just on what happened at the valet area. It was on what might have led to it. Anonymous posts suggested that multiple overlapping tensions may have existed before that night. Some pointed to alleged personal disputes. Others hinted at financial pressure. A few went even further, describing a chain reaction of unresolved issues that had been building for a long time. None of it confirmed. But by now, confirmation wasn't what was driving the conversation. Belief was. And belief had already taken hold. At the same time, attention shifted back once again to Offset's broader life, his career trajectory, his personal relationships, his public challenges. Everything was being reanalyzed as if every past moment needed to fit into a larger explanation. Old interviews resurfaced again. Past conflicts were revisited. Even neutral statements were reinterpreted as possible signs of deeper tension. And with every layer added, the story became less clear, not more. Then came the most explosive element of all: the return of Katt Williams to the conversation. His resurfaced interviews, already circulating online, were now being edited, reposted, and amplified with dramatic captions. These clips focused on his broader commentary about fame, pressure, and the entertainment industry. The reality: he never addressed this specific incident. He never named Offset in this context. But that didn't stop the internet from connecting the dots. Because online, context is often reconstructed after the fact. And in that reconstructed reality, his words began to feel like something more. To some viewers, they sounded like warnings, insights that suddenly felt relevant in light of recent events. To others, it was overanalysis, turning vague commentary into concrete explanations for something that hadn't even been fully understood yet. And once again, the audience split. One side saw meaning. The other saw misinterpretation. But both sides kept the conversation alive. And then came the final shift. The most unsettling question of all. Not what happened. Not even why it happened. But what hasn't been revealed yet. Because despite hours of discussion, endless analysis, and constant updates, major gaps still remained. Official details were limited. Timelines were unclear. Many of the circulating claims directly contradicted each other. And that uncertainty became fuel for one last wave of speculation. Some suggested there were missing pieces of the timeline, details that hadn't been publicly addressed. Others believed the situation was more complex than any single narrative could explain, and a growing number of voices began hinting that more information could still emerge, information that might completely reshape how the incident is understood. Again, nothing confirmed. But at this stage, confirmation wasn't necessary to sustain attention. Curiosity was enough. And curiosity was everywhere. The story had now reached its most unstable form, a mixture of fact, speculation, interpretation, and emotion all existing at the same time. A narrative constantly shifting, constantly expanding, constantly pulling in new details while leaving others unresolved. And that's what makes it so powerful. Because stories like this don't end when the event is over. They evolve. They grow. They take on new meanings depending on who is telling them and who is listening. Right now, that process is still happening, in real time. And until something definitive emerges, something that cuts through the noise and provides clarity, the cycle will continue. New theories will form, old ones will resurface. Every detail will be re-examined again and again. Because the truth, whatever it is, hasn't fully surfaced yet. And until it does, the story remains unfinished. That's what people are still arguing about everywhere: comment sections, live streams, reaction videos. Some say it's being overanalyzed. Others insist we've only scratched the surface. But almost everyone agrees on one thing: this story doesn't feel finished. And now it comes down to you. What do you think is really going on here? Is this just a moment being blown out of proportion? Or is there something deeper that hasn't fully come to light yet? Share your thoughts, because every perspective adds to the bigger picture people are trying to piece together. And if more information comes out, and it probably will, this story is only going to evolve even further. So stay tuned. Because in situations like this, the truth doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in pieces,